I want to start with a quote by Jackie Van Obost. She happens to be the top-ranking female in the U.S. military, and she says, "To be it, you have to see it. To be it, you have to see it." And this quote kind of captures the overall theme for the month of March. So the organization of ministers who craft the themes every month says this about the month of March. This month, we open to the highest idea of our lives through the spiritual practice of visioning. Opening up to the impressive spirit through visioning allows us to tap into a realm of possibilities much greater than we can even begin to imagine for ourselves. So the question is, what do you see for your life? What do you see for your life? Because to be it, you have to see it. So what do you see? The bigger question is, what does Spirit see for your life? Another way to ask that is, what is your soul? What does your soul see for your life? So I want to talk this month about how we can tap into the spiritual ideas for our lives. And one method is visioning and then listening. So I want to start with Jackie Van Obost's story, because I was looking for a story to tell you that illustrates this idea of having a vision for our lives. And she was featured this week in a news article that I saw on television, Jackie Van Obost. I'm like, there's my story. When you open up and say, I want a story, it comes. So Jackie was a teenager, and she grew up near Miami, actually, in the 1980s. And her father ran a flight business, and she got her pilot's license before she even got her driver's license. She was a very young pilot. And she said she just loved the feeling of freedom that she experienced, in her words, when she strapped on an airplane. She was aware that once you were in a plane, once you were in the cockpit, it didn't matter how big you were, how small you are, whether you were male or female. The same freedom was available to all people as pilots. And she was able to see this possibility for herself because of her father, but also because of Sally Ride. So, as you may remember, Sally Ride was the first female astronaut, and she was Jackie's idol. And Jackie even flew a small plane in a hold pattern near the launch pad the day Sally Ride went into space. And Jackie said she was wearing a t-shirt that read, "Ride, Sally, Ride." It could have said, "Ride, Jackie, Ride," right? So she entered military academy, and she went on to the Air Force flight school, and she graduated, but as she expected in those years, she was denied access to every single clearance she asked to fly fighter jets, because women were not allowed to fly them back then. So she had this inspired idea. She was undeterred, and she had this inspired idea to kind of go in through the back door, and she became a test pilot. And she rose through the ranks that way, through this whole other way. And over the years, she was flying every kind of fighter jet that she was denied access to, right? And on her way up, she just challenged and changed the rules and the thinking about female pilots. And she's now, as I said, the highest ranking female in the military as a 4-star general. So General Jackie Van Obost had a vision for her life, and it was an inspired vision. It didn't matter how many obstacles were in her way, no matter how impossible it may have seemed. She just kept holding her vision and moving toward it. And she now teaches younger Air Force recruits, and she knows that her presence as a female pilot, so highly ranked, gives other people the possibility of a higher vision for their own lives. You know, Jackie did not accept the limited vision. She didn't accept the limited vision her parents may have held for her, or society held for her. The officers that were making decisions about her career, she didn't care that they didn't have her vision. She just kept going. Every no she received along the way, she just kept being excellent where she was. And eventually those negative responses became possibilities and opportunities. And along the way, over these 30 years, you could have asked her, has she made it? Has she done it? And she told a news reporter this week that she would not be done with her quest to be somebody until she was finished teaching as many younger pilots as she possibly could. So Jackie Van has a story, an inspiring story that we can all learn from. And that story is about holding a vision for our lives. And every one of us knows somebody who has a story like Jackie's, who just overcame everything, had a high vision. When we all have a vision for our lives, we really do, but is it the highest one possible? So let's really kind of make this personal, okay? So our minds are incredibly powerful and creative. And each of us holds in our mind a picture we have of our own success, our own fulfillment, or our own satisfaction. And this picture that we hold in our minds has been influenced by many, many people and many experiences, and it changes throughout our lives, right? I'm sure you can relate to the experience that I have of my picture kind of changing quite a bit. So what were your early visions for your life? Think about that for a second. What I dreamed and visioned for myself when I was young was, one, I thought I would be a psychologist for children, right? But I also had a vision of myself as a mom. I really wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to be a teacher. Those are some of the ideas that I had for myself. And as I aged, my vision for my highest life became being a successful businesswoman, because that's kind of the path I was on. And I wanted to be a really great mom, right? And at some point along the way, somewhere, I began to vision myself as a minister and as a spiritual teacher. And the point is that based on the way your road of life twists and turns, my vision shifted. And I'm sure yours has too. As I learned more about how life worked, and I learned how my kind of personality fit in with the wider world, and I learned about the power I had in holding a vision and in influencing my outcome, my vision shifted. As my values shifted, my vision shifted. As the people around me changed, my vision shifted. What I'm trying to say is that we're constantly shifting the picture we hold for ourselves. And you're a part of that shifting too. And most of us kind of shift our vision unconsciously. We don't even realize we've let a picture go until we think back, like, wait a minute, I had this dream for myself, but somewhere it went away, right? We sometimes let it shift in an increasingly diminishing way. We allow our vision to kind of erode instead of grow. What if we took this month? What if we took the month of March to shift our vision for ourselves and for our community? Most of us have spent the past year shifting our vision for our lives, our daily lives, right? We've all done that. It's not often that I could ask the question, where were you 1 year ago? And feel any kind of confidence that you'd know the answer.
Oh.
But 1 year ago, 1 year ago today, as I said earlier, was our last Sunday like this, a year ago. We closed for COVID and then everything changed. So where were you in your life when this pandemic changed everything? I guarantee you are not in the exact same spot that you were in. Things have changed, things have shifted. But have you updated your vision for your life? And perhaps is it time to shake loose the vision that got kind of smushed a little bit by this pandemic, right? And have you invited Spirit to help you update the vision for your life? So how would you feel if I made the claim that everything is always changing? Right? You'd probably agree with that pretty easily. But would you agree if I claimed that everything always changes for the better? Whoa, wait a minute. Lots of things have changed this past year, Laine, but I don't think they were all for the better. But my assertion that things are always changing and they're always changing for the better, but sometimes you are labeling the change as bad or unwanted while it is still in the middle of processing or percolating or whatever you want to call it. You're taking the short view instead of having faith that in the long view, you will see how it changed for the better. So Jackie Van had to hold on to the belief that things were still in the middle of processing. She had to take the long view, and so do we. So do we. You know who Tony Robbins is, the motivational speaker. He said this: once you have mastered time, you will understand how true it is that most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. So I think it's interesting this morning, we're talking about a year and we're also talking about a decade, right? So all of us have had a year since the pandemic began, but taking a longer view, someday all of us will have a decade to look back on this time in our lives. What has happened in your life this past year? What has happened to us here at the center in this past year? What was your life 1 year ago? Who was in it? How did you spend your time? Where did you have value? Have those things changed? Let me just share a little bit of my own perspective, right? See if it illustrates the point. So a year ago, my life looked very different than it does today, right? On every front. So over the past year, this ministry, which is my only job, suddenly changed drastically. It changed drastically. We went completely virtual, and I had to punt. We had to figure it out. And we scrambled, and then we figured out how to do that, and then we figured out how to come back together with mask and distance and all that. We scrambled with the change. 1 year ago, I was living in Tampa here in an apartment. Many of the things that are currently giving me joy in my life, right now I didn't even have in my life a year ago. And over this year, I let go of some long-term friendships, actually, that weren't serving me any longer. And after the initial shock and the grieving process, I can see the blessing in those changes as I cleared those spaces in my life. And here I am. But all of those changes took some time to reveal how they were for the better. But all of them were. And I imagine that when I look back a decade from now, I will see more of the better, see the purpose of things, right? I have allowed the vision for my life to shift. And if I had stopped in the middle of any of those changing processes, and they're still changing now, and if I stopped here right now and judged them in that moment, it might have been easy to see some of those changes as mistakes, or identify the ways that I was a victim, right? Or doubt my ability to kind of weather all those changes. Because sometimes right in the middle of a big change, the process is murky and the outcome is unclear, right? And it's in those moments of being in the middle of transformation that we are encouraged to surrender the current moment to Spirit. Surrender it. It's in those moments that I'm called to trust and have faith that the divine intelligence is working through all of it. It's working out for me, and I simply cannot see it. There's that old saying, if you're going through hell, don't just put down roots and make it your new home, right? Keep walking in faith. That life is unfolding. So that's kind of my personal experience for this past year. I had to go within many times and get a new vision for my life, and actually a new vision for different aspects of my life. I had to look at what I needed to become in order to rise. I had to look at what I need to release in order to shift. And that's all a part of that visioning process we're going to talk about all month. But mostly I had to know and have faith that things were changing, and they were always changing for the better. And that is not an easy task. So let's look at the center. Let's look at the center as a more of a whole. This community as an entity, it's always changing. And over this great year of change, if you were a part of it a year ago, you may notice that we've seen a lot of changes. Some of our beloveds have left our group for lots of reasons, right? Some people have moved on to find another community or another faith or another minister or whatever, or a wide variety of reasons. Health concerns, moving to accommodate the pandemic, shifts in their lives, whatever. We've got to trust Spirit has given them a new vision for their life. A new place, a new way. But at the same time, we illustrated a minute ago, some of you weren't even here with us a year ago. We've welcomed so many beautiful souls into our community just this year. Change is always happening, because people are always getting new ideas and visions for their lives. And we've changed a lot this past year for the better in other ways too. We transformed our sound system because some of us had a vision that we could be better, right? We attracted Derek to be a key person on our music team, a deeper talent. This is a vision that we held and prayed for and treated for nearly 3 years. Our practitioner core has kind of solidified around these principles and practices over this past year too. And we intentionally embraced the elementary school across the street so that we could deepen and fulfill our vision to make a bigger difference in the lives of those people right here around us in this community. So things are always changing, and they're always changing for the better. As our visions change, our lives change. It's how the creative process works. And those are just the changes that unfolded in the past 12 months. Today, as I said, we're celebrating 10 years, a whole decade of this community. In 2011, the founding minister, Reverend Alan Vukas, held the first service the first Sunday in March in 2011. And so many seismic shifts have occurred in the past 10 years. And some of these changes were certainly hard to be in the middle of. I wasn't even here for some of them, but most of them must have felt like loss as they revealed themselves, and their intrinsic blessings took time to see. It would have been easy to be discouraged when the founding minister resigned. It probably was discouraging. Or when our board president just had to move to Ohio to help her husband and be with family. It's a big, big change for us. It'd be hard to look at changing our meeting location several times as blessings, but ultimately they were, and they're still unfolding. So for 10 years, these changes have always been for the better. But again, perhaps not easily seen in the moment. But over time, the positive outcome reveals itself, right? This center has solidified into a community that has great impact in the individual lives associated with it, including yours, but also great impact on the community around us. And I've just had to simply learn to have faith that all the changes happen for the better, no doubt. Janice Ian, she's an iconic musician, she says this: the best thing you can learn from the worst times of your life is that it always gets better. It may take a month, a year, a decade, but it will get better if you leave yourself open to it. So how does all this relate to you? How does it relate to you? What changes have you gone through in the past year, or for that matter, the past 10 years? You know, how has your personal vision shifted over time? You know, maybe you changed jobs, you know, and you can easily see how this change benefited you. But if you can't, sit in faith and trust that the better is yet to come. Hold the vision that motivated you to make the change, right? And maybe you moved and you knew immediately that your life has changed for the better. Or maybe you're still trying to settle into a new life, settle into a new place, find your stride. Just remember the vision. Relationships are always evolving towards something better, even though sometimes the something better is bringing that relationship to a close. But maybe you are experiencing the aging process from a kind of a negative perspective. Remember, you're actually becoming more and more yourself, your wisest and best self as you go. It's always changing and always changing for the better, always. And we teach here that the universe conspires on your behalf. That means that whatever is going on in your life, you're always being pulled in a positive direction. Your highest self, your soul, is always reaching for something greater, and your connection to spirit allows that road to rise to meet you. And sometimes you're unaware that you're asking for something greater. You know, sometimes things change and you don't know that you asked for it. But sometimes it's inside of you, and God knows your heart. Sometimes your deepest wishes are never even spoken to yourself, and then life unfolds around you for that. Spirit joins you in that creative process. Ernest Holmes says this: through spiritual discernment, we see that we have within us a power which is greater than anything we shall ever contact, a power that can overcome every obstacle in our experience. So your invitation is to relax into the changes happening and start looking for divine intelligence unfolding in your life. But what if we purposefully want to have a new vision? What if we go seeking a new vision? What if instead of passively allowing our souls or our human selves or whatever to steer our lives, we went inside to seek the calling within us? Our lives are transformed and expanded when we live in and from the question, what is Spirit's highest ideal of itself as my life? What is Spirit's highest idea for my life. Visioning is that spiritual practice of listening, asking those big questions of the universe and listening. It's a practice where you get quiet and let Spirit answer those questions. The point is to get very curious and open ourselves to something new. Sometimes we get surprised when we open ourselves up to new ideas. So I've given you all 2 colored pieces of paper. I want you to take these papers home, but right now, I want you to write on both of them. On the first piece of paper, I want you to write, what do I envision for CSLTV? What do I envision for CSLTV? And on the second one, what do I envision for my life? What do I envision for CSLTV, and what do I envision for my life? So over this week, I invite you to open yourself up to imagine what Spirit's highest idea might be for our spiritual community and for our life. And you do this however feels right for you. Pray about it, daydream about it, imagine it, consider it over a sacred cup of coffee in the morning, and just imagine, what does Spirit have in mind for CSLTV? What does Spirit have in mind for my life? If you're familiar with the spiritual practice of visioning, then do that, right? If CSLTV could be the most perfect spiritual home for you, what does that look like? If your life could be as fulfilling as possible, in alignment with your soul, what would that look like? And then whatever comes to you, write it down. You can write sentences, you can draw pictures, you can write just some single words. It's okay, it doesn't really matter. And I want you to bring the piece of paper back that's about CSLTV. Don't write your name on it, and there'll be a basket, and I want you to put it in. Because I want us to be able to discuss this during our membership meeting next week when we talk about the future of our community. What do we want? And it would be helpful if you came in with some inspired ideas. And it doesn't have to be this fancy piece of paper. If you lose your piece of paper, it's okay. I don't need a piece of paper. I don't care. Right, just bring them back and put them in. And as for your personal visioning, you might want to bring those pieces of paper back too, because we're going to visit this every week throughout the lessons this week about visioning for our lives. And James Allen, he's the author of this book called As a Man Thinketh. He encourages us to dream lofty dreams. Dream lofty dreams. And as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. Your ideal is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. Dreams are the seedlings of realities. Dream lofty dreams. I want to thank Reverend Alan Bugis for having a spiritually inspired vision for a new Science of Mind Center here in Tampa 10 years ago. We are living out his vision, yes, but each and every one of us helps the collective shift the vision higher and higher and bigger and different. Always for the better. Always for the better. So let's read our one sentence affirmation. Everything in my life is always changing for the better, guided by my vision. Happy 10th anniversary. And so it is. There is
So it is.